Hey guys, welcome to my channel Miss Recap. Movies start with Katie and Sloane, who are looking forward to their upcoming out-of-town trip. They will be working at a farm for a month, so they can save money to go New York City. On the next morning, they get picked up by Katie's cop uncle, Jason, and will be staying at Jason and his girlfriend's house for a night before going to the farm. Sloane suggests that they should make a fake names during their stay in the town. Sloane comes up with the name Feather, while Katie comes up with the name Ripple. The day after, Uncle Jason dropped the two off at a station from where they will take the bus to the farm. Being the protective cop uncle, Jason tells them that they should come up with a safe word in case they get in trouble. The deal is, they need to send a code word at the end of every text. In other words, Jason asks Katie to send him a different code word in the alphabetical order every day. The safe words of the day are, apple. After the uncle leaves, the two still have to wait for the bus, which is scheduled to arrive in an hour, and they decide to wait at the cafe. They immediately catch the interest of two men and end up sharing a table with them. The two women introduce themselves with them as Feather and Ripple, while the two men introduce themselves as brothers whose names are Jed and Lucas. The brothers offer to give them a ride to their workplace, and although Katie is initially reluctant, she gives in to Sloane's silent plea. The two end up climbing into the young men's blue truck. However, things don't go as planned. Jed deliberately passes by the farm where Katie and Sloane work, which confuse the two women. And they arrive. The two women are welcomed in by Jed and Lucas's mother, who invites them to have some tea before heading to the farm. Once they get inside, Katie receives a text from her cop uncle, and with their agreed safe words apple, she let him know that she's fine. Meanwhile, the two eat some pie and drink some tea. After that, their sight becomes blurred as it turns out there's a drugs in their drinks. The two notice that they drug and immediately run after realizing something's off. Unfortunately, Jed and Lucas manage to knock them unconscious and carry them back inside. On the next day, Katie and Sloane are panicking and chained up in the middle of the woods. Jed walks up to them and tells them that they will now be living here, and they are given basic amenities to survive such as clothes, a bed, and a toilet. Next scene, where Katie and Sloane are now dressed, and Jed's boss, Boris, shows up and takes Katie's phone to check if anyone knows their location at this point. He discovers that Katie and Sloane lied about their names, as well as the code word she used in the text message. Katie and Sloane finally are forced to tell him that the word, apple, is a safety word. Katie and Sloane are getting ready to take a bath with makeshift showers, right when the town sheriff shows up with his gun out. As it turns out, the corrupt sheriff, driven by depraved desires, arrived with sinister intentions. His presence was a stark reminder of the darkness that condoned human trafficking. Katie, visibly shaken, was his target. After the sheriff's heinous act, Sloane rushed to Katie's side, offering comfort and solace to the traumatized Katie. On the town, Jason is getting worried because the text he received from Katie contains the same safe word that she used yesterday. Back the woods, Jed and Lucas welcome another customer who from this point on we shall refer to as Scruffy Guy. He picks Sloane and brings her inside the trailer. Unsurprisingly, Scruffy Guy is a psycho and burned by a cigarette. Back to Jason, he finally makes a call to Sloane and Katie's place of work, and said that they never showed up for work yesterday. He thinks that they are in trouble. He looked for them. Meanwhile, Sloane and Katie's day is just about to get even worse, because the next customer that shows up is even sketchier than before. Jed and Lucas rush to cover their heads as the next customer walks closer. Pig Mask Dude picks Sloane and takes her inside the trailer and make unforgettable experiences after he leaves. Katie's turn to soothe a shaken Sloane. They don't know for sure what the Pig Mask Dude did to her as Sloane appears even more traumatized than before. On the next scene, Uncle Jason reaches the sheriff's office and comes face to face with the town's perverted sheriff who saw earlier. Here we learn that the uncle is actually not just a cop, he is actually an FBI agent. He voices his concerns and is convinced that his niece is kidnapped. To make even more interesting, for some reason the FBI uncle decides to tell the sheriff about how he knows they're in trouble because Katie did not use a new code word in the latest text message she sent. Back in the woods, obviously the sheriff has informed the kidnappers about the fact that Katie's uncle is an FBI agent and that Katie lied to them about the safe word. Not wanting the FBI to poke around their human trafficking business, the boss Boris tells Jeff to kill them both and dump their bodies. They don't know that Katie is listening to the conversation while this is happening, while Uncle Jason decides to visit the cafe where he last dropped off Katie and Sloane. Then asks the barista about what he knows. The barista remembers what happened that day and said Katie and Sloane left with two men have a small blue truck. On the next day, Katie tells Sloane that the kidnappers are planning to kill them, shortly before the kidnappers arrive along with Ugly Guy. Then they leave the Ugly Guy to watch them. And Katie takes this opportunity to seduce him. And once she gets close enough, she bites his throat and killed. Katie and Sloane hide then proceed after that. The sheriff arrives at the scene, They know he is going to kill them, after getting out of the car. Katie and Sloane stole his car and drive back into town and proceed the hardware store to buy a weapon to gear up and use to take revenge, and ask the cashier if he knows Boris, the man with a blue truck, and the cashier said he knows where he lives. Meanwhile, Uncle Jason continues his investigation by visiting the town's car insurance building. He makes up a story about accidentally colliding with a blue truck and asks who owns it. In the other part, boss Boris returned to his house. It turns out that Katie and Sloane have sneaked up on him and throw a bunch of nail-spiked tennis balls at him, injuring him badly. Now that the tables have turned, Boris tortured little by little. After that, Boris pleads for his life, even goes as far as offering his money in exchange for his life. Uncle Jason pulls up in front of Boris' house. Back inside, Katie and Sloane begin questioning him about the identity of the man with the pig mask. When Boris refuses to reveal, Katie and Sloane take a things that makeshift spear they made and put it inside his back, which eventually kills him. When Uncle Jason finally enters the house, Katie and Sloane have left and ride the blue truck, and he takes in the sight of a dying Boris. Jason then hears the roar of car engines and storms outside. Katie and Sloane drive off, while Uncle Jason rushes the dying Boris to the hospital. On the next scene, the sheriff informs Uncle Jason that Boris did not make it. Growing even more worried, Uncle Jason decides to try calling Katie's phone, but then realizing his cover is blown, the sheriff takes out his gun and pointed to Jason. In the other scene, Katie and Sloane pull over in front of a church, and they found out that the priest in their town is the man who's wearing a pig mask. Sloane went inside the church and confronted the rapist, and with the help of his friend they overthrew the priest. After that, Katie and Sloane drive away, and they are now carefree. But when they make a stop and step out of the car, the pig mask dude aka the priest is chained behind the truck this whole time. In the final blow, and then they poured gasoline and set it on fire before driving off. While the two women seem to be thriving, Uncle Jason is now held captive by the sheriff. Even worse, it appears that the sheriff has captured two new young women. But Katie and Sloane have come to the rescue and hit the Shri IF, and they tie up and torture him with a game of Russian roulette. We can see here the extreme revenge of the two that we cannot blame why they did it. The sheriff started apologizing right when Katie finally finishes him off with a blow to the head. Afterwards, Katie and Sloane free the women and tell them to free Jason. And Jason tries asking the women who killed the sheriff, but they ignored him because Katie and Sloane saved their lives. Next, Katie and Sloane pay a visit to Jed and Lucas's mother's house, and they decides to drug her the same way that she drugged them a few days ago. And they tie her up and take her in the basement, where Jed is tied up and gagged. They proceed to bash his head with baseball bats while the mother is forced to watch. After that, they take her to Lucas, who is also tied up to a chair. However, instead of beating him to death, they untie him and give him a bat and threatens him to beat his own mother. When Lucas voices his unwillingness, they shoot him in the head. Afterwards, the Katie and Sloane set up the body of Lucas so that it looks like he killed himself. And it is revealed that they plan to pin all the murders on him. Desperate, and the mother offers them money in exchange for sparing her life. But instead of sparing her, Katie takes the lawnmower and brutally murders her. On the next, Uncle Jason pulls up at Katie's house to pick her and Sloane. It appears that some time has passed. Katie and Sloane get dropped off at the airport and excitedly make their way to New York City. The movie ends here. Thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notification so you can watch more videos like this.